Let's take a look at the Mars Lumograph Color Aquarell by Staedtler. This video is not sponsored by any of the companies mentioned. Hi, Shannon Rowe Jackson here from Caution Artist at Play, and I recently broke my low buy no buy because I'm addicted to watercolor pencils. I heard about these because of all the videos that came out from the NAMTA trade show through my pal Angela, because she was watching the videos around the same time, and these are supposed to be light fast and artist grade. So when I saw that, I was like, ooh, I have to try them and add it to my watercolor pencil review series. So let's take a look inside and see what we've got going on. I only bought the 12 set because Lord knows I already have enough watercolor pencils. But again, I had to try these because this is part of their artist series. And right here it tells you why choose the Staedtler Artist Series. The Staedtler Artist Series is a premium collection of artist-grade tools with outstanding features, crafted for those who demand precision, performance, and expressive freedom in every stroke. So basically, this is their higher-end premium series of art supplies. Now, they do have a bunch of other kinds of watercolor pencils, ranging from kids' pencils to beginners all the way through artist grade. To my knowledge, this is their only line of watercolor pencils that have light fast ratings on them, which is why I decided to get them. I think the one that's just behind this in their company would be the Aquarell, and a lot of people have asked me to review those, but I couldn't bring myself to pay the price for them knowing that they don't have light fast ratings. But in here you can see the complete color chart. They actually have 120 colors, which is a pretty good sizable line for watercolor pencils. And it has the light fast ratings right on the color chart, and it also has it on the pencil, which I'll show you in a moment. They come in sets of 12, 24, 60, and 120. They will be available open stock. As of the time of filming this, they are not fully available in the US yet, other than on Amazon. So this is what the pencil looks like. It's a hexagonal shape, which is perfect so it's not rolling off the desk. It has all the Staedtler branding on it. It says Mars Lumograph Aquarell, has the paintbrush, and then right there you see the color with their star ratings for their light fast ratings. Now, their ratings are a 1 through 5 rating, with 5 being exceptional and 1 being essential. They were tested according to the Blue Wool scale, and they actually have fairly average light fast ratings when looking at the whole line. Only 16 of them are exceptional. They have 25 that are 4-star, which isn't terrible. But then they have 19 that are 1 or would probably be considered fugitive. This is what the set looks like all together. It is a pretty good range of colors. For a 12 set, I was pretty happy with the colors that they chose to put in this set. I think that because watercolor pencils are highly mixable, anything that's water soluble is going to be more versatile, so you don't need a huge set to start off with. I think I'll be able to do whatever I need with these. So we have white, yellow, orange, red, purple, dark phthalo, light blue, green, grass green, brown, and black. So a pretty standard selection for a 12 pack. And again, you can see those light fast ratings nice and clear on the side. I really like that. I like the dark barrel and the lighter writing. It's all fairly clear for somebody who wasn't wearing her glasses when she filmed this. And then the end of it is colored to look like the color that it's supposed to be, and they did come pre-sharpened. And the tin has a nice little hinge on it so you won't lose the lid. It came in pretty good shape. Mine came from Amazon because they're not available in a lot of US stores yet, but they do have the proper safety labeling on the back to be sold in the US. I'm hoping that they will be available at Blick and other US retailers soon. I will link them in the description below as soon as they are here for Blick, and I will put the Amazon link. And something that was really interesting at the time, I got them on a deal on Amazon, and they were actually cheaper for me to buy than the Aquarell would have been, even though these are just slightly more advanced than the Aquarell. So it was pretty interesting. They do seem to be a little bit more expensive than the Aquarell line now, but just marginally. So here is the swatch card that I did. As you can tell, I swatched it out in a gradient. I left part of it dry and part of it wet like I typically do. Pretty vibrant. They seem to wash out okay. They didn't leave too much of the grainy texture, although some of that is to be expected. These are pencils. They are not straight up watercolors. Okay, so now you are seeing my black test. I do this on a cold press paper, and It's a little dark right now because it's still wet, but then I'm going to come across and work on some black watercolor paper and test my white pencil. And I like to do these alongside the other brands that I have reviewed, so I have a good comparison. And I gotta tell you, these look and feel a lot like the Lyra Rembrandt that I reviewed not that long ago. I found that to be pretty interesting, especially in the black and the white. And yeah, the black is phenomenal though. It is a beautiful, beautiful black pencil. I still like my ink tints, but these wash out fairly smoothly, although this side of the paper is just slightly smoother than the front side. But yeah, that's looking a lot like the Lyra Rembrandt. I was like, this feels very familiar. And then I did the white pencil, and it feels and looks a lot like the Lyra Rembrandt. It's pretty interesting to see the comparison side by side. Holbein, I think, and the Prismacolor watercolor pencils are still my favorite whites, but the Staedtler did pretty well. Cretacolor Merino, oh my lord, bane of my existence. But these two look very similar to me. And I found that to be interesting because these two companies are from the same city in Germany. However, when I looked it up, it doesn't appear that they use the same factories to make theirs. But if you're from that area and you're more familiar with these two companies, please let us know in the comments section below. Anything that I looked up said that they're not related, but I'm not as familiar with these two companies. I've really just started recently using a lot of their supplies. So I just found that to be interesting. If anything, it shows that Germany puts out some pretty darn good art supplies. Now I am going to start on my piece. This is always the real test because I'm going to be layering, I'm going to be using the palette method, I'm going to be using all the different kinds of techniques that I like to use when I'm working with watercolor pencils. Because watercolor pencils are very versatile, and so I want to see if I can get the most out of each pencil that I am trying. And I decided to go with a floral for this because most of my watercolor pencil reviews have been either florals or butterflies or bees or a combination of those elements. And I find that much easier to compare the pencils when I work in a similar kind of theme because I'm going to be using similar kinds of techniques, and so it gives me a little bit more of a rhythm. And I am using Arches hot press watercolor paper for this. Because they remind me so much of the Lyra Rembrandt and they're fresh on my mind, I'm going to talk a little bit about how they compare. They have pretty average light fast ratings, but I have to say, I think the Lyra Rembrandt, they have more light fast pencils. So if you're somebody who already has the Lyra Rembrandt, I don't think you need to rush out and get these as soon as they're available where you're at. Again, they're not available everywhere yet, but I will link them to the places that are available. And as they become more available, I will link those places as well. So if you're watching this a year or two from the time that I actually filmed it, you might have half a chance of getting them at Blick. Anyways, I digress. I'm in a weird mood. But what I was getting at, though, is the Lyra Rembrandt, there's only like 72 in their line, so they don't have as many pencils, but they have 52 pencils that are rated as the highest light fastness. Now, granted, Lyra's rating system is a little bit different. They only do a 3-star rating as opposed to a 5-star rating, so you kind of have to weigh that out a little bit. I think with these ones, you could get away with using the 5 stars and the 4 stars. That will give you a bit more. That gives you 41 really light fast pencils if you're using the 4 and the 5 stars, but that's still less than 52. Just keep that in mind if you're somebody who cares about light fastness. You may not. If you don't, you might want to run out and get the whole 120 set. Why not? I'm not stopping you. It's your art. You do what you gotta do. But I do feel the need to mention that for people who like to sell their work or people that are a little bit pickier about archivalness. It's interesting to see the comparison amongst the different pencils. I actually keep a spreadsheet of all these different things, and it's pretty interesting to see the range. Now, it is difficult sometimes to get a pretty good light fastness on a water-soluble product. So in general, these are right in line with most watercolor pencils. Nothing good or bad to say there. Just figured I'd mention it for those of you who want to know. But overall, they did all the things that I needed them to do. I enjoyed them both wet and dry. You see, I have a Caran d'Ache palette Aquarell off to the side. That is a plastic palette with a rough side on it made specifically for wet media like this, so you can scribble it on and pick it up with your brush like a watercolor. That technique worked great here. I was able to glaze that way and layer, and I was able to lay in washes in areas where I wanted it to be a little bit lighter, because that technique tends to give you a little bit more of a faded look, which is great in certain areas. You'll see that on my petals. You know, places you don't want to go too dark too fast, it's good to use the palette method for. But they are vibrant, they layer well, they work great dry, which is very important to me as a person who has a colored pencil background. All in all, I really did enjoy myself. Am I going to go out to get the full set? Me, as someone who already has way more watercolor pencils than I need, no, I'm not. And the price wasn't terrible. As I mentioned, I had to get it on Amazon. It's, you know, the prices are always subject to change. I think I spent around $33 for the 12 set. That's already gone up though. Right now, as of this time period, again, prices are subject to change. They're about $39 for the 12 set. I think you can probably get something less expensive, but they're brand new. So just like with the light fastness, I do feel like they're pretty well in line with other watercolor pencils as far as price goes. They probably will go up and down and fluctuate price-wise as they become more readily available and more popular. But again, I'd say they're fairly average this day and age for the price of a watercolor pencil. If you already have watercolor pencils you love, you don't need to rush out and buy these. They are a great pencil. They feel great in the hand. They have done all the things that I've needed them to do. Staedtler makes really great supplies, and I like that they have been recently putting more emphasis on putting out a line that is more akin to what a professional artist is looking for. But, you know, I feel like they didn't really necessarily break the mold with these pencils, even though they are really good. All in all, though, they are a pretty darn good pencil. They've done everything I want. They're really strong, too. No breakage while I am working, even in places where I kind of burnished a little bit while they're dry. I always like to test that out. They didn't break that way. A few crumbs here and there, but no worse than any other pencil that I've used. A little less than some of the more expensive pencils that I've actually used, honestly. So pretty good there. And they keep a sharp point pretty well. No breaking during sharpening. Sharpen really easily. I accidentally sharpened one a little too much because I used the wrong sharpener. I forgot, and I used a fine point sharpener that I don't normally use. I think it was my white pencil. I did snap the lead on that, but that was only because it was way longer than it had any business being. Like, you want a sharp point, but you don't want it to be too long. Like my dark pencil there, I think it was the black one. I had done that there too. So you're going to see some long leads. I only broke one. And it held up to the sharpeners really well. It's just because I didn't feel like grabbing my other sharpener and bringing it over to where I was. So, but I did have a ton of fun. I was able to mix the greens that I wanted from this set. I used a lot of my yellow with my black to mix greens that were a little bit more on the earthy side. And then I had my regular kind of emeraldy green for the ones that I wanted on the cooler side. And I ended up using every color in this set. I brought some of the dark blue in, the phthalo, I think, for shadow areas and some shadow areas on the leaves. And I brought that sky color in the background in the sky. So I was able to use every single color in the set, and they all worked really well together. They mixed well together, and they washed out pretty well with minimal grainy texture. But again, with a watercolor pencil, you're going to see some of that anyways. You're dealing with a pencil. It's a little bit unavoidable. I also came in at certain points with a colorless blending pencil, which is just a wax pencil with no color to it, to blend the areas that were dry around the edges, clean up some edges. That worked as well. So I do think they are versatile. You could bring them on the go, and that way there you would be able to use them dry if you wanted, or use them wet if you wanted. I do think I might throw this set in my plain air bag, because I've been looking for a good 12 set to just throw in my plain air bag. And I think that these might be the ones. I think they'll do whatever I need for them to do. And I like the fact that the tin has the hinge on it, so I don't foresee it getting like popped open in my bag as easily, and the pencils falling out as easily, and me losing the lid and all that. Obviously, it's only hinged on one side, but it did seem to latch really well. So I do like the design of the tin. I do think that's going to be better for portability, which is important for me lately. and I'm not as concerned with the light fastness when I'm working on the go. As far as the light fastness in the 12 set goes, there was a mix. There were 2 that were 5-star, which is the outstanding, then 3 that were 4-star, and then 1, 3, 6 that were 2-star, and then 0 that were 1. So no fugitive, but not a lot of highly light fast either. Something that I really do love about this set though is that it essentially includes 2 different kinds of primaries, because you could use the purple, red, the light blue, and yellow as your kind of cyan, magenta, yellow color scheme. Or if you're into the traditional kind of red, blue, yellow kind of color scheme for your primaries, they do have a red, they have the dark phthalo, and they have the yellow. So you could mix whatever colors you want from this set. So I do like this set. I recommend though, if you are going to try any of the pencils from this set, once they're open stock, get that black pencil. That black pencil was beautiful. I actually chose this reference because it had a lot of black shadows in the background, and I want to be able to utilize that pencil. It is a beautiful black pencil. And I thought the white was pretty good as well. I've seen worse, I've seen better, but it did the job. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Have you tried these pencils? Do you want to try these pencils? Let's talk about it. I will see you next time. You have a fantastic day. Bye.